True learning isn't about information. It's about reasoning. Over my more than 12 years as both a peer-reviewed academic and an educator, I've come to realize that building arguments beats virtually every other memorization or retention method out there. And so not only will I prove this to you, but I'll also teach you 3 steps for implementing this approach to master whatever you're currently learning as well. So let's start with step 1. Don't just consume. Form an opinion. So take a moment to reflect on your current approach to retaining all the new information you're learning. Do you keep a notebook to store all these facts? Do you create mind maps or use some specific app to keep track of it all? Or are you using some specific memory hacks? Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. These can all work pretty well, but if you're still struggling to retain what you learn, then you're probably still missing the most important point. Namely, what purpose does all this information serve? Why are you learning any of this in the first place? Back when I was just getting interested in my own academic field of value theory, I started to find myself going down a rabbit hole of learning. As I started to explore this field, I realized that in order to understand it more fully, I needed more background in multiple fields: neuroscience, psychology, economics, statistics, philosophy, and so on. And before I knew it, I was taking 5 to 6 books out of the library each week, burying myself in an endless stream of information. I mean, come on. Be honest, this probably describes you to some extent too. But you see, eventually everything started coming together for me. I started to overcome that feeling of being overwhelmed and buried by information. But how? Well, this point is key, and it's a crucial point that will help you master the art of knowledge retention and retrieval. And that is, in my mind, I started to assign a role to each piece of knowledge. You see, as I was learning all this stuff, I started to form an opinion on what I was learning. I started to take a specific position, namely that character-based accounts of value were incoherent and useless, and that duty-based accounts were superior. Okay, so if you have no idea what that means, it doesn't matter. The point here is this: was that opinion well informed? Was it correct? Was it based on the best evidence or logic? Not at all. But that didn't matter. By taking that position, facts such as Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development that I had learned from psychology, facts such as the Cayman blocking effect I had learned in neurobiology, and ideas such as value naturalism that I had learned in philosophy were suddenly all so much easier to remember, and for a simple reason. If someone ever challenged me on my opinion, I had to always be ready to use those facts in order to defend my position. In other words, each idea had a role in the purpose of proving my position. And so while there are all sorts of memory hacks out there, when you build arguments, every fact goes from being a disorganized jumble of randomness to a mobilized force, all poised in the same direction toward a common goal. And this isn't simply my own anecdotal experience. Various studies have shown that this process of building arguments enhances not only knowledge acquisition, but also knowledge retention. But now, off the bat, you might feel like this is somewhat of a pig-headed approach. After all, how could you possibly have any kind of opinion or position on something you're just learning? Isn't this just a tad bit presumptuous? Well, that leads us directly to our next step in this process. Don't just form opinions. Seek counter-arguments. One of the most valuable things I learned in my study of my field of value theory. Now, that's kind of a meta thing to say, isn't it? Well, anyway, what I learned was the importance of creating an airtight argument by anticipating not only counter-arguments, but as is common in philosophy, your replies to the counter-arguments, and also the counter-arguments to those replies, and so on and so on. You see, although forming an opinion on the topics you're studying helps you retain and recall the information more easily, this opinion should be a qualified one. In order to truly master the information you've learned, especially if it's from all different fields, because you're a polymath type of person, well, you absolutely have to start researching the opposite of your position. You see, opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone has them. For your opinion, and therefore your knowledge, to have any value above and beyond that of a belly button, seeking counter-arguments is a necessary step. In my case, this meant presenting my ideas to some of my professors at the time and having them positively demolished, which, although frustrating, challenged me to study each idea at a more granular level. And here's why this is so important. You see, each fact you learn is kind of like a tree. When you first develop your opinion or position, the fact, like the tree in front of you, seems simple, straightforward, even if it's still a bit complicated. But as you challenge yourself, or you allow someone else to challenge you, you start realizing this tree has roots and that they split off in all different directions. First, you see the roots split into 2 or 3, but then you find those roots themselves split into 3 or 4, and before you know it, you identify new levels of complexity to those facts you never realized before. In my case, as one of my professors recommended books and articles for me to read, I realized that my understanding of character-based approaches to value theory was so shallow. There were aspects of Aristotle's work I had been misunderstanding. I had totally overlooked the work of Albert Bandura and social cognitive theory. I had no knowledge of neural networks or computational psychology, and I had never even cracked open a book on decision theory. Yet these were all necessary for understanding the counter-arguments to my position and, more importantly, for deepening my understanding of the entire set of facts and ideas I was working with, to the point, in fact, that these facts and ideas ceased to be simply facts and ideas. They were quickly becoming part of my overall mental model. Think about it. You don't have to remember that 1 + 1 = 2 or that the Earth revolves around the sun, do you? In fact, this information is virtually impossible for you to forget. But why? Is it because you constantly review it and memorize it? No, it's because it has become part of your mental model for operating in the world. It has become a permanently internalized way you interact with your reality. And that's exactly what these first 2 steps help you achieve. And if you want to truly master these first 2 steps, then check out my free critical thinking masterclass at the pinned comment below. But at this point, you might yourself raise an important objection, namely, doesn't this process of opinion and counter-argument complicate things instead of simplifying them? Doesn't it force you to learn even more facts and ideas and simply worsen the problem of retention? Well, I'm glad you brought up that point. Well, at least I did, because that leads directly to our third step in this process. Don't just build arguments, continuously refine them. So let's go directly back to the original problem. You have too much information spread out all over the place, and you're having trouble retaining and recalling all of it. Well, ask yourself, which facts exactly are you having trouble retaining and recalling? Well, let's go back to our tree again, with its roots. You see, the first 3 roots that split off from that tree are like any 3 facts you want to learn and retain. Let's say 1, Japan's rapid industrialization in the 1800s led to its rise as an empire. 2, the British Empire at the time was expanding into Africa and East Asia. And 3, France experienced a brief revolution in 1871. Well, as you engage in steps 1 and 2 that we've discussed, you're working your way further down the roots of this tree. And in the process, you're discovering new ideas and facts that support these facts and how they might relate to each other in your argument. And these go into more and more granular detail. For instance, 1, Japan canceled its unequal treaty with Britain in the late 1800s and was therefore able to further industrialize. 2, partly because of France's weakness and Prussia's strength after the Franco-Prussian War, Japan copied the Prussian system of military and government and was able to avoid full British colonization. Well, it might look at first as though learning these 2 additional facts induces even more burden on your memory and cognition, but consider this. What was your goal in the first place? It was to internalize those first 3 facts and internalize them so fully that they effectively become part of your mental model. They now become simply the base level of information for you. If you want to then go deeper and retain those additional 2 facts, then simply dive deeper into the level of granularity of those 2 ideas. Submerge yourself to yet further offshoots of those roots. In short, the deeper you go down those roots, the more easily you're able to automatically internalize all the facts above those roots, because everything above those roots has now become part of your base level of knowledge, part of your mental model. But you might complain at this point that you want to fully master every fact and idea, that you want to retain all of them, that you want to master every single one of them. Yeah, me too. But here's the thing. Unlike a physical tree, the ideas and facts that branch off from other facts and ideas are infinite. There is no end to what knowledge we can learn and the level of granularity at which we can learn something. In fact, in my own field, I'm always discovering entirely new areas of investigation scholars in this field are working on at some subdivided, more and more granular level. And it's never ending. It's a continuous rabbit hole. And so then, what's the point of it all? Well, simply because you have a human brain, you'll never be able to retain and recall every fact or idea. You'll never be able to explore all the many winding paths each root system takes down to infinity. However, you can become what's called a T-shaped person. Go deep down the path of one of those root systems and therefore deeply understand one field, yet at the same time go wide on the root systems of other parts, learning just enough of all the other fields that they support and help you keep refining over time your argument or overall position down that deep path you're taking. And the best way to do this, especially if you're really busy, is to keep a journal and write something in it daily. Write down your thoughts and ideas every day, and at the end of each week, take 30 minutes and write a mini essay. Express your argument, address the counter arguments, keep refining your position, and you won't only retain and recall this information in the long term, it will become true knowledge. If you want to keep leveling up your critical thinking to make a massive impact not only on your own life, but also on the lives of countless others, then be sure to watch this next video.